Italy's Mount Etna volcano erupted dramatically on Monday, June 2nd, with some scary looking videos of tourists fleeing the site from pyroclastic flows coming down the hillside. Thankfully, no one has been reported harmed or injured by the incident, but let's talk a bit about the eruption. First of all, Mount Etna is Europe's most active volcano right now, with eruptions maybe once or even twice a year sometimes, so activity is not uncommon and sometimes there are larger eruptions. It's also key to remember that Mount Etna is a big volcano. It spans a very, very wide base, and so communities are actually quite far away when there are eruptions up at its summit. In this case, the eruption produced a pyroclastic flow. These do tend to move faster and further than, say, lava flows or maybe lava fountains, as they are hot clouds of volcanic ash, gas, dust, debris, rocks as well. This pyroclastic flow was contained relatively high up the slopes of Etna, so it wasn't so close that it was going to affect communities downslope, but there were restrictions in place already before this eruption happened. So it's possible some of the tourists that had this experience were beyond the restrictions that were put in place, which is why it's so critical when visiting any volcano or volcanic site around the world. Please check the activity, the updates, what the news is saying, what the observatories are saying. These observatories monitor these volcanoes on a daily basis. That is their job. That is why they are there. There are a couple of ways that you can form pyroclastic flows. In this case, it appears that there was a buildup of material up towards the summit from previous activity that became unstable and then collapsed downslope. This is something that we also call a block and ash flow. So basically the big rocks get pulverized into volcanic ash, and also the gas propels it downslope. This gas inside is also hot. It sucks in the surrounding air, and that air then rapidly expands and becomes buoyant and rises above the flow to form those huge pyroclastic clouds that you saw in the videos. The eruption threat has now been downgraded since the eruption, thankfully, and Etna will probably continue its relatively normal activity over the coming weeks, months, and into the rest of the year. So just a reminder that whilst this kind of activity is relatively uncommon for Mount Etna, it is possible. So if you're ever visiting this site ahead of time, just look to see what the current state of the activity is, and please be aware of any warnings or restrictions that are put in place for tourist visits.